Hello ladies and gentlemen, I'm Matt from Matt's Bookshelf, and today I am doing my bookshelf tour. I did one last year, but since then I've acquired a lot more books, and I've also gotten rid of some other ones, so I think it'd be a good idea to update everyone on what I have and what I don't have, and what I've acquired since the last time I did a bookshelf tour. And first and foremost, who put this first? Colors Wonderland? Did you put this first? You're a little rascal, you are. It is my book, Hollow Stars, A Paladin Saga, which is available on Amazon, and there's a link in the description below for you to buy it on ebook and paperback. And the plot description is also on Amazon as well. And also, if you click on the icon, you can read the first chapter to see if it's something that you might be interested in. But yes, I wrote this book. I published it a month and a half ago now, and I am my own marketer. So here you are. This is the sponsor of today's video, me. My first two books are books I got from Drunzo, and this will be a running theme throughout the entirety of this bookshelf tour, and they are I, Claudius and W.B. Yeats' writings on Irish folklore and literature. I will read these at some point because both are incredibly interesting to me. They're ancient Rome and Ireland, so two topics that I like to read a lot about. I also have Henry Miller's The Rosy Crucifixion. I read Henry Miller's Tropic of Cancer a couple months ago, and it was absolutely incredible. So I went back to the same bookstore where I bought Tropic of Cancer and then purchased this book, which I'm very excited to read. Guy de Maupassant's Alien Hearts. I read his short stories that are normally excellent. They're mostly excellent, and I'm excited to see what he can do with the novella form. John le Carre's The Spy Who Came from the Cold. This was recommended to me by the channel Booktime with Ryan. He did an excellent video on his history with John le Carre, and I asked him in the comment section what book he'd recommend me reading first by him, and he said Spy Who Came from the Cold. And I actually read it, and I think it's good. I don't love it, but I do understand why it's appealing to spy fiction, to fans of spy fiction. Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian. I've never read Cormac McCarthy before, but I've heard that this is pretty excellent and also really messed up, and I like both those things in my literature. And so I'm going to read this later this year, and yeah, my first time reading Cormac McCarthy. I know he's got 2 new novels coming out, so I want to be more familiar with him because he's still relevant today. The Son of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I just finished reading the Iliad, and I want to read more about this time period and this, ancient Greek literature. And I think now is the perfect time to actually get around to reading this because, while the interest is still fresh in my mind. Cleopatra by Stacy Schiff. Cleopatra is an excellent historical figure, fascinating historical figure, and I've heard that this history has some interesting perspectives in it, so I'm going to read this at some point. I don't know when, though. One of my favorite novels, Shogun by James Clavell. I stole this from Colors Wonderland. Well, he let me borrow it to read 4 years ago now, and I loved it. I read it 4 years ago, and much of the plot is still incredibly fresh in my mind, and I cannot really justify giving it back to him because I know that it would just sit on his bookshelf, and so I decided to keep it for my own safety, my own sanity. And to be honest, he probably would have had it in his book on haul video, which he just did about a month ago, so I shout out your video, Tyler, so that is for payment, I guess, so you're welcome. Gustave Flaubert's Flaubert in Egypt and Roman Society by Donald Dudley. These are both books that Drunzo gave me. I'm very excited to read this at some point, but because I love travel writing. I haven't been to Egypt, and this is on the TBR, I guess. Nada by Carmen Lafort. Lafort. And I've been to Spain twice in the past 10 months, and I really want to read more Spanish literature, and by all accounts, this is a really great book to read to get more into the culture. But, Spain, I didn't really know a lot about Spain before I actually traveled there, and since I've gone there, I've been obsessed with Spanish culture, and I just heard this book is excellent. Gravity's Rainbow by Thomas Pynchon. I'm going to start reading Thomas Pynchon at some point. I keep putting it off, but 2023 is going to be the year of Thomas Pynchon. Do not mark my words. J.R. by William Gaddis. Tyler got this book for me just for me to suffer. Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. Hilary Mantel unfortunately passed away about a month ago, but this is a beloved book, and her legacy will continue to live on through her excellent writing. The Man of the Renaissance. I was going to read this before I went to Italy in July, but I didn't get around to reading it, and so I don't know when I'm going to read this book. Tacitus's The Agricola and the Germania. Or the Germania, it's excellently written, as you'd expect from Tacitus. There's a certain level of excellence you can expect from his writing and his history. Finnegans Wake and the Skeleton Key for Finnegans Wake. I bought these two in the same bookshop visit. I was never going to buy this book until, the Skeleton Key made itself known, and I was like, okay, well, this is just perfect timing and perfect coincidence, so I made the purchase, and this book terrifies me. Early Irish Myths and Sagas, Fatale, The Professor and the Siren by Giuseppe Tomasi di Lampedusa. Lampedusa is one of my favorite authors. I read this while I was in Sicily, actually, and this is a collection of 3 short stories by the author, The Professor and the Siren being the titular and first short story, and the only one I think that is worth reading. And even though the other two are not quite as good to me, I do think this book is worth purchasing just for that Professor and the Siren short story alone. A Chill in the Air by Iris Origio. This is Iris Origio's diary accounts of the rise of fascism in Italy in the 1940s, and it is a brilliant account with all expert analysis and critique by Iris herself. This is really, really great, and it gives you an idea of what propaganda was like in Italy at the times they tried to convince people that fascism is a correct way of government, and what they're doing currently is just, when in actuality it's not. The War in the Iliad, which is a collection of literary criticisms by Simone Weil and Rachel Bespalov. As I said, I just finished reading the Iliad, and this is an excellent companion piece after finishing the Iliad. These essays are fantastic. I don't want to spoil their perspectives, but they are really, really well thought out and researched, and I was just thoroughly entertained while reading them. And it's a fairly short as well, only a little over 100 pages, so if you finish an Iliad and you're looking for a little bit more, I think this is the excellent place to look for. Michael J. Fox, No Time Like the Future. Burial Rites by Hannah Kent. I talked about this more specifically and more in depth in my 6-month wrap-up video from like 4 months ago, and this is my favorite book post-2010s. Hannah Kent is brilliant here. I highly recommend this book. Tiberius, The Resentful Caesar. This is a very specific and odd book, and it is for a project that only one person watching this video knows about, and you know who you are. You know who you are. Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov. Yes, I said that right this time, I think. And this is a masterpiece. I read this in last December, and it's Master and Margarita. Everyone knows it's excellent, but even knowing how excellent it is, when I read it, I was still blown away. The writing is incredible. As someone who is, still working and publishing my novel at the time, I found the story and the themes to be really important to me as I was reading them. Tacitances, The Annals of Imperial Rome. Virginia Woolf's The Lighthouse. This might be my favorite book of 2022 that I've read. I did a video on it, but even the video does not do this excellency any justice. Gone with the Wind, an anniversary edition. This was at my uncle's house, who unfortunately passed away 2 summers ago, but he had a pretty large collection of books, a lot of which I wasn't interested in, but I found this on his shelf, and I haven't read Gone with the Wind, but I just couldn't, part from it. I think this is just an excellent edition, and it's incited me to actually read the book at some point, but I don't know, I found this edition, I'm like, what the hell, I'd never seen this before, and yeah, so now it's mine, and I really hope to read it. The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. Wuthering Heights by Emily Bront. I've been longing to read this book for years now, and now it's October. I think it's a perfect time to read it, but I have so much other literature I need to read for school and everything, but work out for school, but I don't know. I don't think I'm gonna read it this. I'm not gonna read it this month. I want to read it though at some point. The Castle by Franz Kafka. Dronzo told me to buy this book, and I have not read it since. Ovid's The Metamorphoses. The Odyssey, I never heard of this book. The Iliad, I also don't know why this is on my bookshelf. Never heard of it before in my life. Hypatia by Edward J. Watts, an excellent look into I think a overlooked figure in the ancient Greek philosopher groups. She's not as well known as Aristotle or Sophocles, but Edward J. Watts does a pretty good job of taking what little sources we have on her life and explaining her importance and why she should be more studied than she actually is. But she's well known for her ability to combine the two spheres of philosophy, which are like mathematics and like the ethereal. She brings them together and gains a huge following. And I don't want to go further into her life because there are very interesting things that happen in it. Henry Miller's The Tropic of Cancer. Read the first page of this book and you'll know if you want to continue reading it or not. I think it's the best first page of any book I've ever read. Henry Miller blew my mind with his ability to write, and this book has been on my mind since I did a video on it a couple months ago. Yes, this book is phenomenal. The Holy Bible, Noble House by James Clavell. Although not as good as Shogun, Noble House is an excellent book in James Clavell's collection and his resume, and just his ability to create elaborate stories with hundreds of characters, all of which have importance and in their own unique identities and are complicated but also, somewhat easy to understand. He's a genius in plotting and character writing, in my opinion. Although he's not an underrated author by any means, I think he still needs more praise than he deserves than what he's been given. Suetonius' The Life of the 12 Caesars. Richard Brautigan's The Hawkline Monster. Sylvia Beach and the Legacy of the Lost Generation. This is my next read. I'm so excited to read this. It talks about Sylvia Beach and how she worked with James Joyce to get Ulysses, my favorite novel, published. So I cannot wait to learn more about my favorite book and the history behind it. This was an excellent find. Thank you, Drenzo. Edgar Allan Poe's Short Stories and Poems. This is just an excellent cover and book design. I love the gold, and yeah, I've read a bit of it, but now it's October. I'm looking forward to reading a lot more. I love Edgar Allan Poe, but yeah, this is my perfect opportunity to just read everything that he's written. Which I should have done a lot earlier. William Gaddis' Recognitions. I'm not going to say anything more because last time I talked about it, I did a whole video on it, which is 40 minutes long, and I mentioned it again in my 6-month reading wrap-up, and I talked about it way more than I had any right to, but that should explain everything. The New Oxford Book of English Verse. Ben-Hur by Lou Wallace. Again, an excellent edition that I'm really happy with. I gotta read it, though, at some point. The Spinning Hearts by Donald Ryan. Dark Lies the Skies by Kevin Barry, an excellent collection of short stories by an Irish author who I met. Next up, my most prized possession. That is my collection of James Joyce works. Dubliners. Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, his first novel. Joyce in Padua, which is a collection of essays he wrote in Italian when he was applying to become an English teacher in Padua. Giacomo Joyce's Unfinished Manuscript. Exiles, his first play. And last but not least, My Sun and Stars, my favorite book, Ulysses. I will not say anything more because I do not want to get caught talking about it forever. Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. I read American Gods, and it's literally the worst book I've ever read in my life. Norse Mythology is a significant step up. Benjamin Franklin's autobiography. Fyodor Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. I have a hot takes video on this book. I really appreciate it, but also it didn't quite do it for me in the middle. The Souls of Black Folk by W.B. Du Bois. Fatherland by Robert Harris. This is a speculative fiction, science fiction novel of what would have happened if Germany had won World War II. This takes place in Berlin and follows a Berlin detective as he investigates the murder of a high-ranking Nazi politician. And it's much in the vein of The Man in the High Castle, but I think this book is a lot better. And I've read it twice, and I really, really enjoyed it. I think it deserves more praise than it gets. One of my favorite books, The Leopard by Giuseppe Tomasi de Lampedusa. This is just incredible. A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess. H.P. Lovecraft's collection of short stories. I like to read this every once in a while, but I do find Lovecraft's prose, although detailed, to be kind of repetitious in its storytelling a lot. So I like to read this every once in a while just to keep it fresh, and so I don't it doesn't become monotonous, and I'm just kind of reading for the sake of reading it. But there is a lot of quality here, but I do think that some short stories are significantly better and more detailed than others. The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins, an excellent piece of detective fiction that I read 4 years ago, and it's still very much stuck in my head. I think this is really, really great. Next up is by Scott Fitzgerald collection. The Side of Paradise, Beautiful and the Damned, The Great Gatsby, Tender is the Night, and The Last Tycoon, which is the only book of these that I have not read yet. And my favorite is Beautiful and the Damned, but there's a certain level of expertise you expect from Scott Fitzgerald that's consistent throughout. But The Beautiful and the Damned being the book that got me back into reading and loving the classics genre. The Black Prince by Michael Jones. The Plantagenets by Dan Jones. I think this is an excellent introduction to the Plantagenet dynasty leading up to the War of the Roses. His War of the Roses book is also excellent as well, but I can't find my copy of it for some reason. Civil War by Gaius Julius Caesar. This is my first ever book I talked about on BookTube, so it holds a very special place in my heart. Next up is my favorite history book, Ronald Sims' The Roman Revolution, which covers the Roman Republic transitioning into a Roman Empire. I recommend that you have a base level knowledge of these historical events, because Ronald Sims is going to completely subvert and throw in your head everything that you took for granted as thinking was fact. And also, in addition to it being so incredibly well researched, he's also a fantastic writer and storyteller. He keeps you in suspense. You keep wanting to hear his perspective on Cicero, his perspective on the war for Actium, the battle of Actium, and he just keeps you hooked. Even though I know the story, I finish a chapter, I gotta read the next chapter. He's that good, both from a historical perspective and from a writing perspective. This is great. I have Ernest Hemingway's The Sun Also Rises and The Old Man and the Sea. I actually have owned more Hemingway novels in the past, but these are the only two that I think have been worth holding on to. I think The Sun Also Rises is one of my favorite books of all time. The Old Man and the Sea is great, but for the most part, I don't particularly find Hemingway to be that compelling as a writer. The Collection of Short Stories by Guy de Maupassant. Next up, I have my collection of Song, Ice and Fire books. I owe everything I am as a writer and reader to George R. R. Martin and to this series. I think this stands up with the best of literature, and yes, these are some of my favorite books. I read all these twice, and I reread sections multiple times after that. I just adore these so much. Stories of the Sahara by Sen Mao. And last but not least, some reads I'm currently going through, that being The Long Ships by Franz G. Begenston. I'm sorry, I butchered that, but I watched The Northman a couple months ago, and I've been longing for some Viking literature in general. And so far, this is fitting the bill. I'm really enjoying it. Sylvia Plass, The Bell Jar. I'm really liking this as well. About 2/5 of the way through right now, and yeah, despite Sylvia Plath having a big reputation of being a fantastic writer, I'm reading this for the first time, and I'm really, really enjoying it, and I think it surpassed my expectations to a certain extent. I also have The Rules of Civility by Immortals. So thank you for watching this video. Again, the link to my book will be in the description below, as well as you can follow my Instagram as well in the description below, and check out my friends Colors Wonderland and Junso. Thank you, and I hope to see you in the next video.